October 2nd, 2020. Here we are down on what I call the South Block. I'll kind of navigate you through this with some aerial imagery for support. So this block is 3,600 square feet. I've grown in this several years previous. Before I took this over, this was completely infested and overgrown with rose bushes. Not a lot of roses in that block. Like that big rose bush out there, completely overgrown and impassable. If you don't know it, rose bushes are excellent soil builders, so if you can brush hog them out or scrape them out or whatever, they leave behind some really nice humic matter in the soil, and they actually have opened this soil up pretty nicely. So I've grown in this a few different years. I had this fenced at one point, but it was plastic fence, and I found the woodchucks were just chewing through it, so I took it down because it was just another thing to maintain around. At some point I'd like to probably fence this in again with some good fencing that'll keep woodchucks out, and then I can add cabbages and lettuces and some of these other nicer crops, more succulent crops to things. Meantime, this is cover cropped in rye, and lower section is not cover cropped. The reason for that is because I'm chicken tractoring it. This is the area that I added a bunch of wood chips to, and they were pine and spruce wood chips, and they basically slowed all my soil activity down. There is some garlic, at least there was back in the spring. I think they'll re-sprout at some point. This whole area was shot with a combination of Sea Shield and Rejuvenate, as well as 3 inoculants: BioCoat Gold, Spectrum Extra, and Biogenesis, just a couple of days ago, right after seeding. And right after a nice heavy rain. We got about 2.5 inches of rain, or 2.25 inches of rain on top of the rye seeding. And then I came in and did the Sea Shield and Rejuvenate shot along with the inoculants. See my other video on Rejuvenate, Sea Shield, and inoculants for helping build soils over the winter, and for helping break down high lignin stuff, high lignin matter material like this, corn stubble, any of those stalks that would normally sit brown on top of your soil and still be there in the spring. That combination of inoculants and a little bit of humic material in the Rejuvenate, the nitrogen and the calcium in the Sea Shield, and I'll probably go into those and what their constituents are a little more at some point. Anyway, that combination basically inoculates and sort of infects this material with good biology and breaks it down over the winter, so you don't have all this residue laying around in the spring. Okay, back to the tour, because this is really just a quick tour. I've got about 17,700 square feet that I had in production in various forms this year or last year or the year before, and so this is 3,600 square feet. This block down here I've showed in several other videos as well. This was rye and buckwheat. Half of this, or about half of this, was tilled and drilled rye and buckwheat, and about half of it was just spread on. It was a mistaken experiment, effectively. This area is 3,600 square feet as well. If I said that or not, but my tiller, the belt on the tiller had broken, and so I had stopped tilling, and I had to order one, and I didn't get back here to finish setting that seed with the tiller, so we did an experiment. My friend Brad from Grow the Farm Up has had excellent success with that out in Nebraska on his fields. He's much larger scale than I am. Anyway, so 3,600 square foot up there, 3,600 here, that's 7,200. And now we're going to go over to this other area. Which I call the corn block area. Last couple of years I planted 4 different blocks of sweet corn in here at 25 by 25 per block in stages. I did that again this year, and I was cover cropping with buckwheat underneath. And what else? This year I added some sunflowers on the edge, both for soil building and for pollinators, and you know, all the other awesome things that they fill in. This also was recently planted. Again, I talked about that in another video. A lot of the buckwheat that was in under here as a cover crop was actually at seed stage, and so you can see that it's all germinating here on top. You can actually see some of the rye germinating in here as well. And actually I got a clip of this earlier, so I'll throw that in here. So just real quick here, we're out in the cover crop area. And some of these Austrian winter peas didn't drill in all the way, but they're germinating, so that's a good sign. And we also have buckwheat germinating here that was reseeded from itself. And I think that might even be a rye seed germinating. So looks like our cover crops are taking off. And I had somebody asking about worms on Comrades and Farms a couple of weeks back. And they were asking about importing worms or buying worms. And I said, you know, you can do that, but it doesn't make sense, because if you set soil conditions right, the worms will come in. Worms are in the soil already. You just got to give them an environment to come in. And this right here is a hole from a worm where a worm came up out. And you can see all this excavation here around that hole. That worm drilled that all out, and you can tell he was a pretty good sized worm. And this proves my point that if you provide the right environment, the worms will come in. You'd be amazed how many worms will come in when you do it right. And I know John Kempf talked about a farmer who had worms come into his, I think it was his onion fields. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was his onion fields. And they had set out some very small onion plants, and the worms were actually coming up and stealing the onion plants and taking them back under the soil and eating them. So you can actually get worm populations so high that they can become a problem on your farm. But ordinarily they're not a problem, and they're an excellent benefit to the soil. Just so people know, across the worm biologically in the soil is sort of like a cross between a chicken and a cow from the digestive tract standpoint. And if you don't know anything about cows or chickens, they both have some really excellent biology in their gut that is also excellent for the soil. And let's just always remember that the soil is the digestive tract of the plant. And I talked about this worm stuff a little bit, and my friend Brad from Grow the Farm Up chimed in. He said there was a huge sort of scam market. I think it was back in the 90s or the early 2000s out in his area out in the Midwest. He's out in Nebraska. He's an organic seed breeder. And he was talking about people going around selling worms to the farmers, which is, it's really kind of a joke, because you can get the worms to come in. All you got to do is provide the environment that they need, just like anything else. Growing healthy plants, same thing. Provide the environment, the biology, and the nutrition. Make it available. They'll do the rest of the work for you. Okay, so 25 by 100 planted in rye, Austrian winter pea, and by default buckwheat. That'll be cover cropping over the winter. That puts us at 9,700 square feet. Next, we'll go over here to the curve block. This started out around a 1,200 square foot block. I've expanded the width a little bit, so it's actually about 1,500 square feet now. This was seeded with buckwheat, sweet corn, and sweet clover, all around about the same time, within a week or two of each other, with the idea that the buckwheat would act as a nurse crop for the sweet clover, and a weed preventer, and a soil builder, and a pollen and nectar producer for the honeybees, and then basically die back, and the sweet clover would come up through that. I've had some pretty good success with that. Some spots better than others in here. But overall, there's a good amount of sweet clover popping up through underneath this. I'm sure you can see some of those plants in there. Also, I had thrown some Hawaiian orange marigolds in here just for giggles. Those did not make flower before the frost. We had a very early frost this year. Anyway, as well as sunflowers, basically soil building this, and did manage to get a nice corn crop out of the earlier variety. The upper half of this was incredible. The lower half was Silver Queen, which is about another 7 days. And so the incredible made it right just about at frost with pretty good ripeness and uniformity. And the Silver Queen, not so much. Although it seems like some of that is ripening now. I may eat some of that. I may share some of it. I may just feed it to chickens and let them have a nice treat. Alright, let's go to the next area. So that's 1,200 square feet. Alright, so now we're on what I call the upper block. The upper block was all overgrown with rose bushes and trees. There were some cherry trees bigger than those in here. Some rose bushes that were a solid 15 feet tall. This was massively overgrown. Maybe I'll throw a link to a video of when I cleared this. Anyway, I cleared this out with a machine, thanks to my good friend Matt loaning me his tractor, back before I had a tractor. I cleared this out and planted a good majority of it to sweet corn the first year, just to help build soil. And I've grown this successfully and done nutrient drenches and foliar feeds and all that sort of stuff. Let's see, I think we cleared this in 2016, so I put it in production in 2016, so 4 years now. Some of this has grown garlic before. This has had all sorts of crops in it. Potatoes, the list is really long. Anyway, this is the first year I've done any real cover cropping in it. I guess I did put some buckwheat in last year, but it was sort of a beginner's attempt. It was successful, but this year I'm more focused on the cover crops. So this is all grown into buckwheat, as you may have seen in previous videos. That was rolled down, then mowed down, then tilled in. And prior to till in, I seeded this down with rye and Austrian winter pea. Over here is another experiment. This is strictly rye seeded down in here, and I came through and seeded by hand so that the spinner on the seeder doesn't get tangled in the buckwheat stalks. And then I rolled this down with a roller on top of the seeding. We'll see what it does. I'm curious to see. Anyway, this was all cover crop this year, and you can see I snuck some more sunflowers in here to support pollinators and help build soils, and also provide some high quality sunflower seed for next year, because I want to put a lot more of those in. I'm really finding they're super beneficial for pollinators, especially honeybees, especially late season. Alright, this area is 4,500 square feet. This also includes the area where I do tomatoes. On the other side of the tomatoes, there's actually potatoes and onions in that giant mess of weeds. And you can see, even after having a very cold frost that did a good amount of damage to the tomatoes, I've come back, I've thrown a couple of foliar feeds on those, and we got some nice ripening red tomatoes coming on. They are absolutely delicious. There's some cherries. And there's some crimson beefsteaks. And I actually finally had my first crimson beefsteak toasted cheese sandwich last night. Did it in the frying pan, all special like, with some butter. Oh, it was killer. And funny, October 1st, my first tomato this year. That is not the norm for me, but I planted very late and we had a very dry season. Alright, let's go down and look at the last block. So I add 4,500 square foot to that. Oh, and I guess while we're here, I'll just show you. We got lots of worm activity in here. These are worm castings here sitting on top of the soil. Boom, 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 boom. So you see, like I said, you don't have to add worms. All you got to do is provide the environment for them, and they'll come in and they'll build your soil for you too. Leave behind their castings. They increase calcium, they increase nitrogen, they put all sorts of biology in the soil. Excellent. excellent tool for building soils. Never hurts just to stop for a minute and enjoy a beautiful sunny afternoon with the sunflowers in bloom. Gotta enjoy it while we can. Won't be long, it'll be blowing snow and ice out here. Ugh. Fat woodchuck approved. Let's motivate him a bit. Okay, this area is the final area in cover crop. This area is 2,000 square feet, bringing our total to 17,700 square feet in cover crops right now. Or, I guess cover crops or chicken tractor. There's that one little section up there that's in chicken tractor. Anyway, this was planted to, well, several different crops years back. This was also cleared from some rose bushes and other stuff several years ago. Maybe 2013 or 2014, somewhere in there. Anyway, I've grown mostly blue corn down here. Did cover crop this with some buckwheat a number of years back. And I grew blue corn and popcorn a couple different years, as well as pumpkins and or squash. Got some very nice Big Max pumpkins out of here. Maybe I'll throw a clip of that in here. Of the Hopi blue flower corn. Just had another foliar feed a couple nights ago to keep things rocking. And pumpkins are filling out. They're starting to orange up nice. Some more than others. But you can see there's a good number of pumpkins tucked in there amongst all that foliage. And of course you can see the blue corn is starting to silk and tassel out pretty good. Starting to develop some of those nice big monster ears that they produce. So anyway, this year I did not run any production in this. I just let it grow in. I had mowed it early season and left it, and then I had done another mow on the front half of it a little bit later, maybe a couple weeks after that, and there was a lot of natural clover, yarrow, and other pollinator supporting crops in here. So when I saw all those flowering, especially the white clover in here, I opted not to mow it again and use it for mulch or anything. And so it provided a nice little pollinator resource pocket here, especially through the dry season, because that mowing kind of offset the flower production a bit, and it just worked out well. So what I've done, instead of coming in here and tilling this up to plant something here, is I've left it covered in grass, and I just basically seeded it down to about 3 pounds of sweet clover. So that's a pretty heavy seeding for sweet clover. And I'm going to let that fill in here along with the white clover, the red clover, the yarrow, and the other good pollinator crops that are already in here. And we'll kind of let this be a pollinator pocket, and we'll let that sweet clover build up biomass. And sweet clover is supposed to be one of the highest honey productive crops. So that's up in here. I'm sure you can see there's a tremendous amount of clover up in here. There's white and red mixed in here as well, but a lot of sweet clover that's germinated. And next year we're going to let that go to full size, and I may capture seed from it. We'll see. But sort of an experiment with sweet clover. That's one I have not grown to fruition yet, and I think that will be an excellent soil building tool and pollinator tool all in one. So that concludes my cover crop tour. I just wanted to share and sort of show off a little bit what I've got in cover crops. I'm really excited to finally have come back around and put a little more focus into cover crops. I think this is going to prove to be tremendously beneficial for my soils and for my plant health next year, especially given the little bit of cover crop stuff that I've done and the tremendous results I've achieved just with that. So I hope you found this interesting or informative. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network. Don't forget to check us out on Truth Frequency Radio, Tuesdays 9 p.m. Pacific, Wednesdays 12 a.m. Eastern Time. And it's a 2-hour show, and we talk about farming, gardening, ecology, all that sort of stuff, soil building. And I hope you'll come join us either on the Pharmacy Seeds Network on the YouTube channel. We simulcast there, as well as Truth Frequency Radio, as well as TalkStream Live, Tuned In, and iHeartRadio. So I hope you'll come find us and join us, or go back and listen to the archives here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network. That's what I get for having the camera in my pocket. All we get is the whitetail. That's the overflow for the pond. That's how low we are. And that's the standpipe in the distance there.